Welcome to a unique episode of the Archetypal Mosaic. This is Sir Mikhail Tank. On the phone, I have a dear friend, a fellow Jungian, a fellow healer, a leading nurse, and a nurse artist, Kathy Iwanowski. Welcome.
Thanks, Mikhail.
So, Kathy and I started out getting to know each other by both studying Carl Jung's incredible work. How do you feel about Jung in general, and what have you learned? What do you use in terms of Jung's work in your daily life?
What was really interesting is that when I was working on my master's degree for fine arts and interdisciplinary arts at Goddard College in Vermont, I had studied the projects really coming from a nursing perspective, and it was about wholeness and what affects our perceptions of wholeness. And the kind of work that I was doing, I realized really kind of, I say, hit a deeper vein. And while I was doing some additional research for my artwork and my projects is when I came across Carl Jung's work, and just everything about that I was reading about him really seemed to, strike a chord for me. And I realized that I needed to maybe pursue that a little further. When I was in nursing school, they really pretty much just studied Freud, and so to come across Jung was really quite exciting as it applied to my work, both as an artist but also as a nurse.
I love Freud and Jung equally. They're actually my favorites. And I had a chance to meet Jung's grandson, and I just on Twitter had a slight interaction with Freud's great-granddaughter, who I hope to one day interview or collaborate with. Now, in terms of Jung and nursing, now you have been a leading nurse in certain facilities overseeing large nurses and large faculty. The concept of healing, it's so strange because there are so many wonderful nurses who do it from the heart, and also because it's a well-paid job and it allows you to go anywhere. In so many countries, you can get a visa by nursing. But nonetheless, people go there with different intentions. Some people do it because of money. Some people want to move to a different country. But you really embody the healing aspect mentally, spiritually, physically. How do you combine all of those things so that you can become the kind of nurse one can only hope for?
Like you said, I've been a nurse for quite a long time, and I actually thought I was going to hang up my nursing cap, so to speak, when I went to art school for my master's degree. And it was during that process, which I think that's what master's degrees are all about, is about learning about yourself, is I came to the realization that I will never lose that aspect of myself of being a nurse. And that aspect for me throughout the years has really been about nurturing and caring, educating. And I've thought really quite a bit, especially when we were both, studying Jung and archetypal studies. I came to the realization that, and that's kind of why I add visionary onto what I am also. I realized that my whole body and soul is really about how do we as human beings, how do we evolve, and what will our evolutionary be in the future. And I've come to the realization as a nurse and an artist that I have to be a part of that. I'm very interested in how we are going to be in the future, and how can I affect that in the most positive way. So it's been a very interesting journey, and I know that I'm still on that journey right at the moment of how to find the best place to do that. Who will be my, who will be my audience? Who will be the people that I will be able to work with to affect that positive outcome? So in many ways, maybe I would be considered futuristic too. I think very much about, like I said, how will we evolve, and what would the future of humankind be?
And tell me, what makes a great nurse?
I think there's all different, concepts about that. I've been a nurse again for a very long time, and my whole purpose of going into nursing was to care about for people. And I also realized I'm an educator. And there's many times throughout my career in different positions where I've actually used the term midwife. I'm very fond of that term and very fond of the concept that I have for it, and that is that as a nurse, we can birth, so to speak, different things for different people. A lot of people think about midwives as only being associated with new life coming in the world, but I've been a hospice nurse also, and I considered myself a midwife at someone's passing, that someone needed someone to be there with them to acknowledge and honor and respect the life that they had, and their passing also. And so I think that when I think about myself as a nurse, I think at the heart of it is about being a midwife, how to help people to pass through whatever situation they're going through to the best of their ability. I have to say that there's been many times when I think that I've helped people who, because I saw something in them, some strength, some skill that they might not have seen in themselves, that I was able to help kind of, support and give them maybe another vision of themselves. And I think that very much, again, fits back with the work of Jung, right? It was about being able to look at a whole person, all aspects of them, and find that part that can move forward, that can take these, what seems like diverse and dichotic sides of ourselves, bring it together and form something new that we've maybe never expected out of ourselves before or seen in ourselves before.
You brought up a lot of great points. I want to ask you about the midwife thing. Where does the term midwife come from? What does it actually mean?
So in nursing right now, midwives are really associated with the care and birthing of the mom and the baby. And I think midwifery really started, I'm not an expert in it, but a lot longer than we think. It's not from recent times at all. There weren't a lot of doctors around, and as a matter of fact, I believe that probably midwives were just women who had experienced birthing babies before, and they were the ones that were there. They were probably the grandmothers, the aunts, the sisters, the neighbor woman who was in a community where there was not a doctor available to help with the birth of a baby. But I look at, as I always have again throughout my life, at even the word birthing. Is it just a physical act? And I don't think it is. I think birthing also has a place in how our thoughts come about and how we move forward in life. When I was working on my master's degree, some of those finding a deeper vein kind of things, I was doing quite a bit of study about depression and grieving, and even with that part of being a midwife is, I think, also applicable to helping people to pass from this one aspect of who and what they were before. We're constantly changing and evolving, but sometimes we get caught up on who we were and what we were in the past when we need to move forward. And having someone, even if it's ourselves, I think we can midwife ourselves, so to speak, if we have the ability and capability and the tools to do that. But having someone else available to kind of go along with us, like a guide, be side by side with us to help us through, difficult situations. And they don't always have to be bad situations. Sometimes the changes that we are making in our lives and in ourselves are not always a bad change. They can be a good change. It's just that how we saw ourselves in the past and how we're going to look in the future, which we're unsure of, can be kind of scary for people, whether it's physical changes, spiritual changes, emotional changes, mental changes. Again, I think about it as a holistic aspect for people, including myself, and I'm definitely on that path myself of making these kind of things and coming through those kind of changes of that's what I was and I liked it, but I know I have to change and this is where I'm going. So I just love it. I just love the concepts. I love the work that's being done. And again, to go back to Carl Jung, I just feel like I wish I could have met him because of the different aspects that he was able to bring creatively. And I think that's something that really ties you and I together also in our work of Jung, is that creativity aspect.
Now, let me ask you about something. First of all, I want to say that Midwifing Ourselves, which you coined right there, would be a wonderful book title, by the way. It really would be. Now, my question to you is this. You also brought up something beautiful about midwifing, a passing on. And I always use the term passing on, which I learned from my Rabbi Schimmel, of whom I made a film, because it's really, you never know what the next stage is. It's never away. Now, about the passing on of the... So, you know, we've been taught and we've heard from many people that we constantly got to kill that ego, kill that ego, kill that ego. I disagree. I've always disagreed. I think ego can be an exceptionally healthy, nurturing, powerful, unique, individual totem. Strong way of finding your individuality, as long as it doesn't overtake and become hubris. So when somebody passes on and you're midwifing them, let's say their ego comes out in a way, or what is that part that goes, here are all my stories. Let me give you the bank of my life, the bank of my stories, and I'll tell you all my wisdom and how great I was at this, how people loved me at that, how many marriage proposals I had, etc., etc. And let's say you're, talking about that on a regular day and during coffee, and people are going to go, boy, that's an egotistical person babbling about themselves. But the other way to look at it is you're sharing your life's truth, to somebody before they pass. Have you experienced people who've given you their bank of wisdom, and how did you decipher not to take it as ego?
I don't think I ever did, and that's what's kind of interesting. It's so interesting that you brought this aspect of that up, because while being a hospice nurse, I observed a lot, and I learned so much along the way from both my clients, their families, and just different instances and experiences. And one of the things that I came to observe was it seemed like there were two types of people or kind of scenarios when people were leaving this world. And it was either the person who was very, like no one wants to die. We want to live as long as we possibly can, most of us. And so there were people that were very angry about what was happening. And I found it to be kind of a coulda, woulda, shoulda type of a thing. And they were just very angry that they didn't take advantage of that opportunity and this thing and whatever. And were just seemed miserable. For themselves, their atmosphere around them was miserable, so it was very difficult for their family. Then there was the other person, and I think this kind of fits in the category that you're mentioning. And that was the person who was like, I don't want to die, but, I look back on my life, and exactly the kind of things you said, I heard of. But I tried this, and it didn't work, but, I'm really glad I tried it. Or I traveled, I probably shouldn't have spent money on that, but I did. And, have a good family, or had a good job, or, I had these other situations. They didn't all have to be good situations. People were able to say the things that didn't work out, that they tried, but it didn't happen, or, kind of experience. I never saw it as ego, but maybe it is, but I never saw it that way. I just saw that there were two scenarios. When I saw people passing, it was either that angry coulda, woulda, shoulda, or the person who experienced life and took life as it was coming to them and Sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. And that was just such a fabulous learning experience for me as a nurse and as a person. That I think was part of the reason why I decided to go on and work towards my art and that creativity and thinking about how can I take these skills that I've been given, these gifts that I've been given, and use them to the best of my ability. And I had the same kind of feeling about it. I know that some things are going to work and some aren't, but I'm sure going to try. I'm sure going to, take advantage of as many things as I possibly can. Maybe that is ego, but I've never seen it as a negative part in those situations.
Now tell me, you brought up another really good point, woulda, coulda, shoulda, the bitterness. Where do you think the bitterness comes from, and how do you think is a good way of dealing with bitterness?
You're asking really good questions today. Because, when I was working on my master's thesis, one of the other questions I had regarding that are perceptions of wholeness. And at first, I was going after perceptions of wholeness from a purely physical aspect, and as you can tell from my conversation, went in a bunch of other places that was much more holistic. So how perfect was that? And part of that then was a question which I think kind of fits in with what you just asked me, which was, where does hope reside? I wanted to know, how does somebody have a sense of hope? And I think that fits in with the coulda, woulda, shoulda. Somebody who has hope, I don't think has the coulda, woulda, shoulda attitude. But the person that there's something that keeps pulling them forward despite the negative things that might be happening or the disappointments in their lives. And then there's the other person who either had hope and how did they lose it, or they never had hope and were they able to get it. And I think it's the person who's the coulda, woulda, shoulda that might not have a full sense of hope. Or have, you know what I'm saying? They might have a little bit in there, but not enough reserve of that sense of hope to pull them forward into those things that they might have been fearful about.
Do you think hope and faith are they go hand in hand, or are they a little bit different?
I think I'm still studying that, Mikhail. I still think I'm working on that. I think for me, I look at it from, I think it is somewhat tied, but I don't have enough, I haven't done enough research or kind of delved into that more to really see. For my own self on a personal basis, I think so. I think for me it is connected.
I think they're very parallel from my perspective. Hope is something you choose, I think, and faith is something you intrinsically have. I think hope is more mental and faith is more spiritual, but you never know. I mean, it's different for different people. Let me ask you about boundaries. Now, being a nurse and a caregiver and an artist, I'm certain that there have been situations and people who felt like, oh my God, she's helping me. I need to rely on her and I need to fully become codependent on Kathy. And how does Kathy decide, while still helping people, to have her own boundaries?
I think that it comes from kind of experience. When you're first a young caregiver, I think even a young mother or a young father, someone who hasn't had experience yet with life and situations, I think that melding of boundaries can happen very easily. But I think as you have life experiences and you come to know yourself better, right? I think that you're able to really start figuring out the boundaries. Like, where am I, who am I, and where do I kind of end, and where is the other person, begin kind of thing, and being able to then either preemptively set up the situation so that you know when you're clarifying your boundaries, or during the interaction of being able to set up, particular boundaries. And I think it's just from, living life and figuring out those kind of situations. I'm the oldest of 11 kids. So I have 10 siblings, and I think that helping to raise them also kind of helps you to develop that earlier than maybe somebody who doesn't have a big family. I don't know, because I've only been from a big family, but I think that kind of adds to it too. But it is a very hard situation when you do care for someone and you want the best for them as a nurse. To set up those boundaries and feel comfortable about setting up the boundaries, kind of goes with that, the previous, thought or theory on a tough love. In a way, it's kind of like that. Also, that you care about someone, but not to the detriment of yourself. It's kind of like the oxygen, falling down out of the thing. They always tell you to put it on you first before you help the other person, and that is a learning experience, I think. I don't know for everyone, but I know that for me, that's how it developed.
Well, let me ask you a small follow-up on that. Do you have you developed a psychological mechanism where when you feel like your own air or oxygen, figuratively speaking, is being taken from you, that you just shut it off from any outside influence and you go, it's Kathy time. It's Kathy time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. For the last couple of years, I've been a manager in wellness services with the Visiting Nurse Association here in Denver, and so I oversaw, 50 plus registered nurses from all different age groups and experiences, plus 7 administrative staff. And when I'm working with them, I'm giving my all. I'm giving more than 100%. And some of my staff sometimes would get worried that, Kathy's sure given a lot of herself. I hope she's taking, care of herself. And I would always clearly state to them that if that's anything that I've learned over the years, is about, I know that I'm the type of person that gives more than 100% to people. But I also know that Kathy needs that recouping time, it needs time to herself, needs time to shut down and shut off in order to recycle myself, recharge myself. So I would assure them that I knew myself well enough that if I still had the energy, I would tell them I could give it. If I didn't have any energy left, I would say, you know what, I don't have any more to give, I wanted them to understand that I could be honest about that for myself, that if I told them I can still help you out on something, or I can work on the weekend for you if you need help, that I meant it. I wouldn't offer it if I didn't have that reserve in myself to do it. But again, that took, years of really starting to define those kinds of things for myself, those boundaries, and getting to know myself and honor and respect who I am. I kind of call myself an extroverted introvert because how I recharge my batteries is to have alone time, to read, to contemplate, to create, but totally in my own space on my own time. And I found that and help my family to understand that when I'm given those opportunities to recharge in that way, I'm a great person for them when I'm there for them, because I have all that energy.
I applaud you for saying extroverted introvert, because I'd have to say that's another thing you and I are equal in. I mean, I've never used that terminology before, but I could now say, as Kathy said, an extroverted introvert, because that fits me exactly. Now, let's talk about mandalas. You've created mandalas, and they've also been a big part of Jung's work, and you were doing them for quite a while. Tell me, mandalas, aside from bringing piece, both to you and whoever sees them. They're very intricate labyrinths. I mean, they have a tremendous amount of layers and depth. Can you describe the layers of a labyrinth, or layers of a mandala?
Well, that's interesting too with coming across, I did not realize that Jung had done all this mandala work, but I, for a year, did a mandala every day. I was going through some huge transitions in my life, and I just felt like I needed something to kind of ground me. And I didn't do kind of the traditional designs that I had been seeing as a mandalas of just repetitive geometry, repetitive symbols and things like that. Although some of my mandalas during that year were totally like that. I really kind of considered them more what I call free-form mandalas, meaning that I just used the circle as my center of focus. But I allowed whatever came out, just like somebody who would be journaling, free association journaling or whatever. I would just allow to what could come out into that space. There is a lot of layering, and I think that complexity is a big part of me as a person. I know I'm a complex and deep person, and so I know that that's some of the things that came out in those mandalas also. Some of the mandalas I did were using stencils even. I had maybe not very much energy or not very much to start from on that day, and they used stencils to get me going. But I think what was very fascinating at the end of the year and looking back at those mandalas, I know for a fact that during that year I had some very low periods. I had some days that were full of fear and what's going to happen, regarding a job or a move or whatever was happening during that particular time, and just feeling very lost and, unfocused and ungrounded. And when I look back on all of those mandalas, I have to say that the thing that was very interesting to me is that, we were talking about hope earlier, right? Hope and faith. The mandalas always maintained this brightness to it, this kind of illumination to them. Whether they were simple or complex, very layered or not. And I found that fascinating because I would have thought that during that time, if I'm feeling down, my mandala's artwork would have looked like, dark skies and, things ahead. And I'm not saying that some mandalas didn't have some dark sky aspects in it, but overall, the mandala itself was still bright and everything. I came to the realization that, and that's what I so loved about our studying of Jung's work, I realized that there was something else inside of me coming through this artwork to talk to me, to inspire me, to keep me elevated, to give me that sense of hope and also testing my faith and things like that. And that I came to the realization, whether you want to use the word spirit or soul, I know that that's what was influencing my work. Because if it was me on that particular day in a fearful mode, in an angry mode, in a sad mode, I would not have created a mandala that looked like that. Something else from within or without, channeling through me as a portal, was helping to create those mandalas. And that just made them even more wondrous to me. And when we were studying Jung and seeing his mandala work and, looking at his work in the Red Book, was just such a fabulous kindred spirit connection for me. Just a fabulous connection.
Talk about soul. That's been my favorite thing since I was a kid. And, I tell people who are close to me, I don't usually broadcast this, but the fact that as a person, I'm very average in most ways. But I know that my soul is very deep and special and old. And I can feel a big difference between that because first of all, I have a very specific situation that happened when I was young, too, that happened, which is a whole other story. But aside from that, around the age 12, 13, and this is about art and healing, which this show is about, Darksoul, which a lot of people misunderstand when they hear me say that I do Darksoul theater and Darksoul music. They go, "Ooh, that sounds devilish." And I'm like, no, you're missing the point. The point being that through all the darkness, it boils, it boils like magma, and it turns into brilliance and light and creativity. But it can't just be all smiles and hee, everything is perfect kind of thing, because that's bull. It has to go through that phase, through all those phases, in order to morph into the natural brilliance. And as a 12, 13-year-old, as a young teenager, you go through so much identity crisis and stuff, and boy, did I as well. But the Darksoul theater and Darksoul music, which you can hear on Amazon and iTunes and everywhere if you go online, is all about healing and turning dark into light. That has always been the way. A couple of metaphors I used before were like using a flashlight to the soul, which sounds redundant now, but and I didn't know who Jung was when I was 12 or 13. I had no idea.
Right.
But the work that he did in the Red Book and in so many other places, and the work that happened through me, and you and all of us who are seekers, it's a similar process, just naturally. It's not a following thing. It's like, oh, you do your work, he does his work, I do my work, and we are the source. We are connected to the source, and that's the beautiful thing. There's so many people who they spend their time, what do you call that? Discrediting. They discredit Freud. They discredit Jung. They say, you can't prove the unconscious. Sexuality cannot be the basis of humanity, and blah, 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 blah. And all they do is sit there and what I call argue with the dead. And we have experienced this firsthand in certain places, and I was so tired of people arguing with the dead, and I'm just like, why don't you respect the source and just come up with something else that can elevate other people, as opposed to just bagging on people? I mean, what's the point? And so the whole point of art and healing and Jung and unconscious and nursing and all these things, these are the reasons why you and I have become very strong kind of friends who don't have to stay in touch all the time. But the point is that we share these incredible keys, and we are seekers.
Yes.
Now,
it's so interesting, Mikhail, you're talking about your explanation for your dark soul work. I have had situations where I'm in this liminal space. I'm in between what was and what's going to be. And for me, it's like being a ship on a sea, just white out. Just all white out. I can't see my hand in front of my face. And at first, it used to be a very hard experience being in that place. And I'm not saying it's 100% easy yet, but it is easier because I know that I come out of that space and I've learned something, or something is waiting on the other side. Where again, previously being in that dark space, quote unquote, was scary. I felt like I had no grounding, nothing above, nothing below, nothing to the sides to guide me. You almost have to stay during that space within to make that transition to come through to the other side. The other thing I think that's interesting in what you were saying was about that aspect of why do we argue about the people that have gone before us, and like you said, whether there's a conscious or unconscious. If in your own personal life you have found certain things to be true, and I think that is part of that seeker part you're talking about too, is about being out in the world and figuring out through your experience, through what you're observing out in the world, witnessing out there, is that being like a truth. And then is that something that I would like to kind of hang my head on and carry that along with me in my little bag of tricks, so to speak, or all these little truths that I found, as being a seeker. I think that is fabulous. And I don't know about for you, but I know for me, what I've found through the years through art and creativity is conversations start opening up, discussions start happening from these spaces that people might not have words for yet, might not have a concept associated with it, but are able to put down a color, are able to get some kind of a sound out, do some kind of movement, any of those expressive arts terminologies that I just, for myself and others, I've witnessed that art and creativity can open up these discussions that may be difficult, that people didn't know where to start from. I don't know if you've had that experience.
You mean art? Of course, absolutely. Art is the healer. I mean, art is the closest thing to, I think, to God, in the sense that because I do believe in God and I do believe in creativity, I think creativity is simply our small version of godliness. And I like the way that sounds. Sometimes you say something, I say something, and it's like it has a little gold ring to it. So creativity is our whatever I said. It just feels right. It's our little godliness. And there's a big difference between ego godliness, hubris, by saying, I am so great, I'm like God, God forbid, because I would never say that, But at the same time saying, I appreciate the creator, but I'm so glad that I can co-create. And that brings life. I mean, it really does. It brings life to people. It brings life to the self, to the soul. And it's a way for... I mean, I know that my soul is happy because I create. If I was to be repressed and unexpressed, my soul would be pretty angry with me. And here's the thing: if your soul is angry with you, life can start getting kind of angry. But when your soul is kind of satisfied, there's a different perspective.
Yeah, I think that soul part in me is that co-creator part you were talking about. I think that it wants to experience as much as it possibly can. It can only do it through me. It can only do it through you. It can only do it through another person in its own personal way. We each have our own soulness that is specific to us. And I think that that's why, there's so much discussion out there about, why should I, create this? There's already a zillion other artists or creatives creating that. Yes, they might be painting that same red barn, but your barn is not going to look like the other person's red barn or the 50 other people's red barn. You can't. Mm-hmm. Because of you and what you bring to that experience. In your situation with your performances, yes, there's a zillion other performance artists out there, but they do not bring that same Mikhail soulness to their work. And I think that is what's really important as an artist and a creative, is to remember that. That that's something unique to you that you are supposed to be doing with those gifts.
Absolutely. Bravo to that. And to our audience, not only are we talking about Kathy and I, but we're talking about you. Each of you has gifts, and don't be afraid to create. Create beautiful things. Create what your soul wants to say in a positive manner so that you can feel joy, extra joy. Kathy and I are going to share our websites with you so that you can see our work. Also, I believe that you can request both of us for, I don't know about you, Kathy, but I think that we're both available for public speaking, for teaching, for private counseling. So check out Kathy's website, which is Iwanowski.com. Can you spell that for our audience?
Yep, so that's Kathy, Kathy, Iwanowski, IWANOWSKI.com. And yes, I'm open to all those things that Mikhail had mentioned.
And my website is simply MikhailTank.com, and my verified social media is @MikhailTank. Kathy, is there anything else you'd like to discuss before we wrap up this inspiring show?
Just that I think that we're talking about something that's very timely right now, right? As people are thinking about, health care and all of the different chaotic things that are happening in the world that they're associating with mental health and behavioral health and these aspects is, again, just to think about ourselves as human beings in a holistic way. We are not just physical beings. We encompass all of that, and all of that needs to be attended to. And that's exactly why I call myself a nurse artist, is because I want to be in those situations that help attend to the whole person.
Bravo to that. And also love yourself and all of your aspects, Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kathy, for being on the Archetypal Mosaic. I feel great about this show.
Excellent. Thanks so much for having me, Mikhail. This is just fabulous. I'm looking at sunlight coming through my window right now, and it just feels fabulous today. Thank you so much for having me.